Good morning, Digit fam. Adam Dowd here, treading lightly on today's top stories. You'll see. But also greatly anticipating some weekend fun, and by fun, I mean watching Keanu Reeves kill a lot of people rapidly. But for now, it is May 16th, 2019, and this is your Digit Daily. It's no secret that the White House and Huawei won't be sending each other Christmas cards this year. Tensions between the US government and the Chinese telecom company have been steadily rising, and the more I learn about Huawei, the more I get it. But then again, I have often said on this very podcast that when politicians get involved in tech, good rarely is the result. So, let's get into it. President Trump signed an executive order prohibiting U.S. companies from dealing with Huawei, I mean foreign communications companies who may or may not be named Huawei that are deemed a threat to national security. Subtle. The Secretary of Commerce will be able to shut down any transactions that pose a risk to national security. The order is intended to, quote, protect America from foreign adversaries who are actively and increasingly creating and exploiting vulnerabilities in information and communications technology infrastructure and services. But tampering with elections, still cool. The U.S. Commerce Department's Bureau of Industry and Security, which is a real thing, I looked it up, announced that it is adding Huawei and its affiliates to its entity list, which is a benign way of saying do not touch with a 10-meter cattle prod list. We reached out to Huawei about this, and here's what it had to say. Quote, we are ready and willing to engage with the U.S. government and come up with effective measures to ensure product security. Restricting Huawei from doing business in the U.S. will not make the U.S. any more secure or stronger. Instead, this will only serve to limit the U.S. to inferior yet more expensive alternatives, leaving the U.S. lagging behind in 5G deployment and eventually harming the interests of U.S. companies and consumers. Ouch. And I get all that, I really do, but Huawei, come on. You don't ask the fox to install the lock on the henhouse. Putting aside the fact that the fox doesn't have opposable thumbs, he's just gonna put on a crappy lock. There's a lot more to the story, but basically it boils down to Huawei is shady AF, and telling the US, let us prove we're not shady, but the US is like, yeah, you're pretty shady. Stop being so shady, and Huawei's like, what if we sign something saying we're not shady, and the US ain't having it? Meanwhile, the downside, the significant downside to all this is that Huawei's kind of right. Huawei is one of the leading, if not the leading pioneer in 5G tech, and the US is handcuffing itself by not using that tech. But do we really want fast internet if all that traffic is routed through the Chinese NSA first? Yeah, probably not. I mean, personally, I don't care. I already give everything I have over to Google, and if Huawei wants to peek over their shoulder, it really doesn't bother me. But I would imagine there are some folks out there with super legitimate concerns. But now, let's talk about even muddier waters, even if it is one of President Trump's favoriteest things in the world. The White House set up a tool to help people who have been banned from social media platforms. This tool is basically a web form asking users to fill out information based on how they were banned from social media and for what reason. The page says, quote, social media platforms should advance freedom of speech, yet too many Americans have seen their accounts suspended, banned, or fraudulently reported for unclear violations of user policies. No matter your views, if you suspect political bias has caused such an action to be taken against you, share your story with President Trump. This comes after several high-profile accounts were banned from social media. You may recall the story from last week. At first I was thinking, why are you sticking your nose where it doesn't belong? But then I wondered, in today's society, we want to treat the internet as a utility, a necessary means of communication. And people who are for net neutrality, myself included, have used that as part of that platform. But if that's the case, then shouldn't the ability to express your views be equally ubiquitous? We may not like what people have to say, but shouldn't they have the right to say it? Now, before you start talking about neo-Nazis and other harbingers of hate, I get it. Those are abhorrent and shouldn't be allowed. But whose right is it to disallow those voices? Twitter? Facebook? Those are organizations with a particular political interest that may see suppression of conservative accounts as justified, but maybe they'll give liberal accounts more leeway? It also should be mentioned that there's a difference between communication and broadcasting. Putting all that aside, here's the part where President Trump shoots himself in the foot. It's the part of the form that says if you suspect political bias has caused an action. If the White House is interested in free speech, for everyone. It shouldn't matter why you got kicked off. If it was political bias, we'll go to war for you. But if it was anything else, we don't particularly care. But you know what we do care about? The roundup! Well, the good news is, it seems not everybody is mad at Huawei. Samsung and Huawei have agreed to settle all lawsuits against each other for patent infringement, instead both choosing to redirect their efforts towards stimulating global smartphone shipments, which were down for the second year in a row. So instead of paying lawyers, they're going to pay PR people, which is an admittedly small forward step, but still a forward step. You remember when Apple had to swallow its pride and pay Qualcomm for the privilege of using its 5G modems? Well, it turns out that's because Apple is still about 5 years away from developing 5G technology on its own, and Intel still sucks hard at it. The information breaks everything down for us behind a paywall, but Android Authority has you covered with a brief summary. Well, if you weren't afraid to fly before, we'll take care of that for you right now. It turns out the radio signals that airplanes use to land can be easily hacked for about $600 in a trip to your local electronics store. Radio signals can be spoofed to tell planes to land too soon or off-center on the runway. And this is one of those times that I wish I could unread something. Officials say that the chances are low. This is a lot of gear to smuggle onto an airplane, and if you're focused on an on-ground attack, you would likely be detected and defeated pretty quickly. But still, I'm glad I'm driving to New Orleans. Proponents of microdosing, which is taking small amounts of psychedelic drugs, say that they can help boost your productivity and creativity, but there's very little scientific research to back up that claim. But I'll tell you what, people, in the name of science, I'll be microdosing rum for this coming weekend, and by microdosing, I mean doing shots. And no, this has nothing to do with the fact that I have 7 podcasts to record in the next 4 days. Nothing at all. This is for science! And finally, Black Mirror is a messed up show, but it's definitely my kind of messed up. Black Mirror announced Season 5 is coming next month, although it uses the term season quite liberally because it's literally 3 episodes. I mean, they look cool and all, but by that measure, The Orville is into its 7th season already. But still, more messed up material from the minds that brought you Playtest can only be a good thing. So, that is going to do it for today's Digit Daily. If you'd like to learn more about any of these stories, check out the links in the show notes and subscribe to our daily newsletter on Digit.com. And if you like what you heard, subscribe, leave a review, and don't forget to tell your friends about DigitDailyPod.com. Once again, I'm Adam Dowd, Dead Technology on Twitter, and we'll talk again tomorrow.